Well, hey everyone, it's about that time of the month. It's time for Ask Lee Anything. My name is Jordan Swain. I am the customer service manager here at Real Mushrooms, and this is the fabulous Lee Carroll. What's up, Lee?
Hi, Jordan. I'm great, thanks. Looking forward to it.
Yeah. So this month we are going to be talking about men's health and how mushrooms could maybe help with that. So, Lee, what do you think about mushrooms and men's health? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, men are a tough category, Jordan, and it's sometimes difficult to get men to stay with their supplements and keep consistent, in terms of what they do. And there's a few unique things about men that really do need attention, and we need to be more focused on, on those aspects. So andropause, sometimes, you can think of that as male menopause. There's a different process going on there, but as men age, testosterone can decline. It doesn't have to decline if you maintain a healthy, lifestyle, you exercise, you eat well. Men can maintain their testosterone levels, but in the average male, it starts to decline. So that's a big focus. Cardiovascular health is really important in men, and the modern lifestyle is really harsh on cardiovascular function. Um, we're all familiar with the saying, the canary in the coal mine. But when it comes to men's health, it's the canary in the trousers, because erectile function is very closely linked to cardiovascular function. So if younger men are having issues with erectile function, then it's it's a precursor for future cardiovascular disease. But I guess prostate is unique to men, and we need to pay attention to that. But mood and cognitive function and all of those things play a really important role. So, as a herbalist, I'm very, very familiar with the wide array of herbs that are useful, to support men's health. From a mushroom point of view, it's a bit of a narrower slice, but there's still a number of mushrooms that play really, really important roles in men's health, and we'll get into those as we go through the session today.
Okay, so just as a question on my own, so we said the canary in the pants. That's kind of I laughed a little bit at that one. So that is kind of like what you would use as kind of like a indication that something might be
It's a
wrong.
diagnostic, it's like, oh, if that's happening, then this is happening. So it's kind of like an early warning sign for future cardiovascular disease.
Gotcha. Okay, well, we're all learning something. We're only 3 minutes in, and we're already learning a bunch. So awesome. And then Lee, we'll go ahead and get into your disclaimer just before we start answering questions.
Yeah, I'm not a medical doctor. We're not offering medical advice. If you've got health issues, you really do need to go see a healthcare professional to get tailored, specific advice that's relevant for you. So this information that we're giving today is kind of educational in nature. It's background. It's adding to your knowledge base so that you can, navigate your health issues with the support of your healthcare professional, more effectively.
Yeah. All right, so let's go on to the first question. And I do also want to give a shout out to Matt. He is the man behind the scenes this evening. So we're going to drag him out next month, but Matt is running things behind the scenes today. So which is kind of a change of pace, but we'll go ahead and get into the first question here. What mushroom would you recommend for male virility?
Wow. Everybody has a kind of focus when you say virility. It's about being manly and being, sexually, active and having, lots of energy and etc. But from a global point of view, a more nuanced answer to that question would be that all of the mushrooms are necessary. Mushrooms currently, when you look at a food pyramid, and not all food pyramids are accurate and reflect, the facts, but what's consistent about those food pyramids is that vegetables always contain the mushrooms, and we should take those mushrooms out of the vegetable category and put them into their own category, the kingdom fungi. So there's things in mushrooms that keep everybody healthy, and men need that just as much as women do. So to be virile, you need whole body health. So mushrooms are really important for whole body health. So as we come up and get more specific, cardiovascular function plays a really important role. Hormonal function plays a really important role. The way that we manage stress plays a big important role in virility. The quality of our sleep, etc. So the two mushrooms, not just one mushroom, but the two mushrooms that kind of fit in my scheme of things into that would be reishi, taken across the course of your life. If you're a guy and you're watching this, you're listening in, you can't go to the gym and do all of your weights, just one day a month. You got to do them regularly every week throughout that month. Otherwise, you don't get the gains. It's the same taking a mushroom or a herb. So with reishi, you need to do it regularly, and I recommend every day for the rest of your life. Buy into the idea that there's a lifestyle strategy around that. And we have no trouble doing that with coffee, so why can't we do it with reishi? And then cordyceps is the other one that fits into that virility category. It promotes energy, etc. And maybe that's not necessary to take for the rest of your life. You could wax and wane on that one, but would be no problem for a guy taking that, regularly throughout their life. So those two mushrooms are really high up on my list.
Would you say that 5 defenders would be a good choice as well? I mean, just kind of like as a overall choice.
Yeah, well, it doesn't have the cordyceps, of course, but for men wanting, holistic support for all aspects of the health, I'm a big fan of the 5 defenders. So thank you for that kind of nuance. And you'd need a little bit more of that, or you could combine the two together.
Yeah.
And the flavor of the 5 defenders, I do both the 5 defenders and the reishi as hot drinks. And I do 1/4 teaspoon of reishi in hot water at least once a day. And it's pretty heavy duty, it's very bitter, and not everybody's going to like that. But the 5 defenders has got an exceptionally well-balanced flavor profile. And if you like a good, strong, bold flavored drink, then it's a really tasty option.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, 5 defenders coffee, reishi coffee. It's so good.
Yeah. I don't tend to mix my mushrooms with the coffee. I like the coffee as a more pure kind of taste. So
yeah,
I'll have my mushroom and then I'll have my coffee, and then I'll have my mushroom and then my mushroom. So I just do the coffee once a day, but mushrooms multiple times.
Yeah. Awesome. So let's go on to the next question. Are there any mushrooms known to increase or support testosterone levels?
Good question. The cordyceps is the one that you go to for supporting testosterone levels. There aren't any human clinical trials, but there's quite a wealth of animal data which shows this. And we've also got the tradition to rely on, where traditionally all of the cordyceps species that are used, but in this case, militaris is the key one. And traditionally, it was used as an aphrodisiac. And that's kind of like a broad term and covers a lot of things. When we talk about testosterone levels, though, it's complex. We live in a modern world and we're exposed to lots of chemicals. So if you look at populations of men and you measure sperm counts, as you go from the center of a city where sperm counts are higher, as you get further into like an agricultural area outside of the city, sperm counts start to decrease. So it's to do with the environmental chemicals that men are exposed to when they live in a more agricultural area. So the chemical burden, the burden of plastics and bisphenol A, the list is really long, place quite a significant stress on natural testosterone levels, and then the corollary of all of the reproductive stuff following that. So what's really interesting in the research is that in animal studies, it's not just about let's just give this rat or mouse some cordyceps and whoa, all of a sudden they're much more fertile and they've got more testosterone and they're having more offspring and that sort of stuff. I think possibly a more important aspect of this testosterone level issue is that in these animal studies, when the animals are provoked into having some sort of condition like diabetes, or they're given some chemical that disrupts the natural production of testosterone, the cordyceps can actually allow the animal to overcome that stress or that chemical or that disease process, and reduce the cordyceps helps to reduce the levels of stress in the testicles. Just thinking about a global tissue, but there's all of the nuance of what happens within there. So that the stress is mitigated, which allows the natural production of testosterone and sperm, etc., to come back online. So there's a specific focus on, yes, the cordyceps, makes the testosterone come back to its normal range, and you can't ever force testosterone to go beyond what's physiologically natural for an individual, and each individual's got a range within which they could work. So think of cordyceps as optimizing what you've been naturally given, but then the cordyceps protects against the environmental challenges that we all face. So in clinic, it wouldn't be the only thing that I use in that case, but as a mushroom, it's really fantastic in that category.
Yeah, cordyceps is probably my favorite mushroom, I would say. So it's pretty much been up there with cordyceps.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, it does a lot of things, and the mycochemically, because I've been in herbal medicine for so long, I always default to the herbal thing. But when you look at the data that comes out when you analyze the constituents, cordyceps is really complex. There's a huge amount of stuff going on there and stuff that we don't know about. So I think there's a lot of discovery that's still to be made.
Yeah. All right. We'll move
on. And the dose
is
easily achievable. It's probably incomplete to talk about these answers without giving dosage ranges. So with the cordyceps, I think that the evidence kind of hones in on about 3 grams a day as a good dose for that kind of testosterone thing. So in a clinical setting, I'm thinking, when I'm managing a patient, anywhere from 3 to 5 grams a day.
Yeah.
And then you get the full complement of all of what cordyceps can offer. And then lower doses, say 1 gram a day for health maintenance, and that idea of if you buy in to do something long term, then that lower dose plays an important role there as well.
So could a lower dose over a longer period of time still show to be effective, or would you recommend more towards that 3 gram?
It's a good question, actually. I think, pick a man in their early 20s and they're unusual in that they want to have a healthy lifestyle, and they want to be moderate in all of those things that they know that are bad for them. So they don't smoke, they drink moderately,
Mm-hmm.
If they had that mindset, then 1 gram of cordyceps a day, and so 2 capsules of the cordyceps, 2 capsules of the reishi, some 5 defenders tea every day, long term would help to maintain things in optimal shape. But if you're the 35-year-old guy and you're like, oh, I've got a big belly, I don't exercise anymore, like we want to have kids and my sperm count's down, then 3 or 5 grams, would make more sense.
Gotcha. Yeah, I was kind of curious about that, where maybe the difference could come in, but that actually makes a lot of sense. So
yeah, and there isn't always a right and wrong answer with these things, but somewhere in there. And being consistent's the hard part too. So it's very hard to be, doing something every day. So if you make it too strict on yourself, like I'm going to do this every day, and I mean, I just said that, like every day for the rest of your life. So when I say every day for the rest of your life, what I mean is that you buy into the idea that that's who you are. So if people ask you, well, how would you see yourself? Well, I'm a mushroom consumer. That's what I do. And if you have a day off, it doesn't disrupt your rhythm. If you have a week off, it doesn't disrupt your rhythm. You get straight back into that kind of plan. So I often tell patients, if it's problematic, just do it Monday to Friday, have the weekend off. Like don't put yourself under so much pressure. It's the long game, particularly, with mushrooms, that gives the good results.
Yeah. And I also like the saying of being a good steward of your body.
Yeah.
If somebody asks you who you are, I am a good steward of my body, and that's taking your mushrooms daily. That's part of it. So
yeah.
So cool. All right. Matt, can we go to the next question? What is the best time of day to take lion's mane?
Well, it depends on what you're looking for in terms of the benefit with your lion's mane. So my first answer would be it doesn't matter as long as you take it, because lion's mane, there's a big focus on the cognitive piece, but lion's mane's underrated as an immunological mushroom. It's really profound in that category, and it's really underrated as a prebiotic and as an agent which helps control the environment of the gut, so that you've got healthy bacteria that live there, and healthier bacteria means healthier gut environment. So the lining of your gut functions better, so you have a healthier inflammatory response, all that sort of stuff. So some people are more sensitive to lion's mane than others. I'm not very sensitive to lion's mane. I can take a big bunch of it and I wouldn't notice a difference. But I have patients say to me, I can take lion's mane and within half an hour, my cognitive function's a bit more clear and capable, etc. So if you're one of those sensitive people, then you could take that lion's mane at a time of the day when you wanted to just be a little bit sharper. You could take an extra dose, when you wanted to be sharper. If you're doing the real mushrooms lion's mane capsules or powder, there's some significant prebiotic action there. The prebiotic action happens at higher doses, so I'd be recommending, maybe 3, 4, 5 grams even, and then you could take that with meals to help ensure that the fermentation of the food as it travels into the large intestine happens appropriately. So there's no right or wrong answer there. You can kind of make it work for however you like to use your lion's mane.
Yeah. My sister-in-law, I know, she tells me all the time she has a subscription with Real Mushrooms, and she's like, man, I took my Real Clarity and my lion's mane. She takes both of them, and she's like, I can focus and I get things done. And she's like, and I notice when I don't take it too. So it's kind of interesting how for some people, we notice it right away.
Yeah, I wish that was me.
All right. Matt, can we go to the next question? So this is a good one. So what mushrooms and supplements would you consider for a man in his 60s who is already strength training and eating right to help with libido and increasing testosterone?
Yeah, that's that's me. I'm 65 next month. So I would go back to what I just said earlier. I'd do two reishi capsules a day. I'd do 5 defenders, either the capsules or the powder in water. I'm a big fan of tasting stuff and getting the bitter, strong flavors in the mouth is not just a taste, but it's also physiological action. So you can actually drive behaviors, particularly appetite and satiety behaviors, by getting those tastes. So my preference would be to have the 5 defenders as a powder, and then the cordyceps would play a role in that. And then in terms of other supplements, the herbs that are used, it's really hard to recommend herbs. We've got the real mushroom, real clarity, real boost, and real rest.
Yeah.
So there's some good herbs that fit into this category, but there's a lot of unethical behavior in the supplement world. And a herb like tribulus, for example, which I use a leaf extract, which is a professional only extract, and it's standardized to the right stuff. And it's really good for enhancing testosterone. But I've seen lots of quality analyses over my 30 years, and it's the most widely adulterated and substituted plant that you can get access to. So giving a recommendation in a forum like this is kind of bound to fail, because it's hard to direct someone to like the exact, kind of thing that's going to work. But tribulus and Tongkat Ali are high up on that list. But ashwagandha, which is in the Real Clarity, I think, there's some really good evidence for increasing testosterone with that particular herb, and it's got a whole bunch of other properties which are very supportive. And Korean ginseng, which is in the boost, I think, it also has good evidence for increasing testosterone. So I also use rhodiola, which is in the Clarity. So those herbs that I just mentioned are the key herbs. So I'd be thinking about real Clarity or real boost as options to support those other 3 products that I mentioned.
Nice. Yeah, my sister-in-law swears by Real Boost and Real Clarity. She loves them. And then my brother-in-law takes Real Rest. So they're all about the Real Herbs line. And
the caffeine in that product from the Guayusa is, that type of extract is a very traditional extract from South America. That practice of consuming that as a beverage every day is the same as our practice as having coffee every day.
Yeah.
And that little bit of caffeine is very healthy for us. And if we have caffeine at low doses on a regular basis, and there's a lot of controversy about this, you listen to some of these really famous influencers, I won't mention names, they've got vested interests in coffee, for example, and they just have the blinkers on when it comes to the negative effects of high doses of coffee. So 1 to 2 cups of coffee a day is healthy, and there's all sorts of evidence for decreased incidence of diseases as you get older. But when you get above 2 cups of coffee a day, you get the reverse happening. You start to get changes in your brain, the receptors that caffeine interact with. And everybody's familiar with these terms now because these influencers have been so good at sort of talking about them. Adenosine A2 receptors in the sleep center of your brain, they get filled up with adenosine, which is a waste of our energy production, and that's what creates sleep pressure. So caffeine binds into those receptors and prevents the adenosine from creating that sleep pressure. So that's why it helps to prevent sleepiness. But those receptors are expressed in the pineal gland, they're expressed in vascular tissue. And when you get too much caffeine action at those receptors in those places, it alters their function and structure. So you start to create vascular issues, which take you down the course of having increased rates of neurovascular disease when you have higher amounts of coffee. And this kicks in after 15 to 20 years of use. So a product like the Real Boost, where you've got that sort of extract, is a healthy way to do it. But since I've learned this, I'm much more conscious of how much caffeine someone should have. And in the US, a lot of people will drink coffee all day. The dripolate is there and just keep on going.
Yeah. I'm personally not a huge caffeine person. I'll have like a cup of coffee in the morning, and then that's about all I'll do. I can't handle more than that. I start getting like jittery, and I get heart palpitations. I don't like it.
Me
But
too. Yeah, it's a bit uncomfortable, isn't it? But
yeah,
not everybody's like that. Some people, thrive on it, and clearly it's a nice taste. We just have to all of those extra cups of coffee just have to be replaced with 5 defenders or reishi or any of those other mushrooms as a tea.
yeah, exactly. Awesome. So we'll go on to the next question here. So what mushroom, specific or general, supports the relief from BPH/ED? I'm assuming that means erectile dysfunction.
Yeah. Good question. With the BPH, there's evidence for reishi in that category at reasonably low doses. So I think that you wouldn't only use a mushroom in the absence of anything else. So reishi would be a really good addition to any other supplemental regime that's being used. And then erectile dysfunction, there's a testosterone component to that, clearly, but there's also a very strong vascular component to that. So the reishi supports the vascular component, and to a lesser extent, it supports the testosterone component as well. Because those studies that I mentioned in animals with cordyceps, there's some studies to show that there's antioxidant activity in the reishi that supports the stress that reduces the production of testosterone as a result of those chemical stressors that I talked about earlier. So reishi would be my the number one choice in that BPH category, and then to support the ED, I would add some cordyceps as well.
Yeah. Cordyceps is like the one for endocrine and cardiovascular, I think.
I mean, I have quite a number of male patients with BPH, and they all take reishi, but that's the herbs that really drive the benefit of that. The reishis are an adjunct support, so it would be wrong to go away thinking that you could treat your BPH just with reishi. You need some good quality, herbs to go along with that. Herbs like saw palmetto. I use a bark from India called Crotava nivala bark, and I use nettle root. They're the three things that are really quite profoundly beneficial, and then reishi on top of that. And the reishi is not a high dose. I think 2 capsules of the real mushrooms product is an adequate dose to get that clinical trial benefit.
Yeah. Can I ask what BPH stands for?
Benign prostatic hyperplasia. So the prostate sits just underneath the bladder, and it can the lining of that because the tube that drains the urine from the bladder goes through the middle of the prostate. So under certain conditions, the cells can increase and create an occlusion of that tube, and the tube can be. You just imagine a hose. You can shut a hose off by bending it. You don't have to go to the tap, or you can squeeze it. Squeezing it's much harder to shut the flow off. So when you get into the nuance of the various things, the kink in the hose can happen by a number of different kind of mechanisms, and depending on how that happens, there's more or less kind of complication. And it's a thing that men often have to deal with, and particularly in men that have higher levels of inflammation that might have more body weight. It alters the circulating hormones, and then the hormonal environment can cause an increase in that tissue. And it's called benign because it's not a cancerous thing. It's just a non-cancerous growth.
Okay. All right. Well, I had no idea what that was,
Little
but thank
little
you.
bit of education, yeah, a bit of male plumbing.
Yeah, male funny. We're all about the jokes this evening. Um, we'll move on to some live questions. So, Wilderness Drifter is asking, what would you say the top mushrooms for Parkinson's are?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Parkinson's has a number of different origins. So it's got that condition has the one name, but it can be caused by multiple things. So
Mhm.
there's a variation on that condition that has its origins in the gut, and the proteins travel somehow up the nervous system from the gut and then come into the brain. There's another form of Parkinson's which has origins in toxicity and kind of increased levels of stress. So if you're exposed to certain chemicals, even as a younger person, then you can have a greater rate of Parkinson's disease. And the disease process takes, maybe 20, 30, 40 years to develop. So the origins of it are happening long, long, long before you would ever think about doing anything to mitigate the development of it. Once you have the diagnosis of Parkinson's disease, there currently isn't any natural product which has been proven in a clinical trial to, help the patient significantly. You can get a bit of a mitigation in the disease process. So, by way of explanation and background, that puts us into the position to say that ergothioneine is a molecule from mushrooms that all mushrooms have, and there's very good evidence from epidemiology and some quite cleverly designed studies which will measure levels of ergothioneine in people, and then they'll come back 7, 8, 9, 10, 15, 20 years later and measure the blood again and look for levels of ergothioneine, as well as other things,
Mhm.
and then compare the disease rates in the various individuals, and then they can match up the changes in ergothioneine with the different expression of the different diseases. And low ergothioneine is very, very, very highly associated with the development of Parkinson's disease. So, as a preventative strategy, everybody should be taking mushrooms daily, particularly ergo. So, ergo plus from real mushrooms is the best place to go.
Mhm.
That should be taken daily to prevent not just Parkinson's disease, but also all of the neurodegenerative diseases track the same in terms of reduced levels of ergothioneine in the blood. So Alzheimer's, mild cognitive impairment, some of the other issues haven't been as closely looked at, but all of the other types of dementia are probably affected as well as macular degeneration and just living longer and having less frailty. So that answers the question like in a very highly specific way, and I think it's underrated, and we really need to just be ringing the alarm bells that everyone in the population needs to be having mushrooms regularly. But because there's this gut flora connection, and I'm not an expert in this, but I've had a few patients with Parkinson's disease, and I've had a little bit of experience in dealing with this. And when we have antibiotics as younger people, antibiotics can cause an extinction of particular species of bacteria in our gut. And a healthy gut needs to have more than 200 organisms. A person who's living a traditional lifestyle in a traditional setting, you say could pick an African country or an Asian country where people haven't encountered much civilization, they haven't taken any drugs, they still eat the same foods that all of their ancestors ate, etc. They have between 500 and 1,000 bacteria species in their gut. So when we take an antibiotic, it doesn't just kill off, reduce the total count. It can actually kill off particular species. So you're just totally absent, that species becomes extinct. And there are some relationships between the loss of organisms like lactococcus species, which closely relate to the development of Parkinson's disease. So maintaining a healthy bowel flora is a really crucial part of prevention strategy, not just for that condition, but a whole lot of conditions as well. You know, Hippocrates is quoted as saying all diseases begin in the gut. What he probably meant to say was that most, if not all, chronic diseases begin in a leaky gut. So we need to place much greater emphasis on that. And the fibers, the beta-glucans, the non-starch polysaccharides that come along with mushrooms as well, and the chitin that makes up the cell wall, which gets bound with the beta-glucans, which you get when you take the real mushrooms 1-to-1 style extracts. They play a really important role in supporting bowel flora. So all of them do that. But the ones that I think about having the most profound influences are mushrooms like lion's mane and tremella. But they all do that. So eating mushrooms on a regular basis would be a preventative strategy. So I don't have an answer for you in terms of treatment, but clearly there's some really profound things we can do preventatively. And from a treatment point of view, I haven't done this yet, but the evidence suggests that high doses of ergothioneine may be helpful to slow down the progression of the disease. So I'd be thinking 20 to 25 milligrams is the sort of dose that's being used in some of the clinical trials now. So I'd be doing at least 2 or 3 of the Ergo Plus capsules a day as a support for patients that should be getting, conventional therapy and specialist kind of attention.
Yeah. Ergothioneine, it just keeps surprising me. I keep learning more about it, and it's such an amazing thing. It
is, yeah. It's the biggest thing that people don't know about.
Yeah. Well, we're going to be shouting it from the rooftops. Ergothioneine, people. Awesome. So we'll move on. The next question here is from Jean, and they're asking, what's your opinion on poria cocos for men's health?
That's a good question. Real Mushrooms doesn't have that mushroom in the line, although I would like to see it at least as part of a formula. So in traditional Chinese medicine, poria, which is an underground sclerotium, and it's a white thing, and lots of different cultures around the world have used various poria species and similar genera that produce those things as medicines and also foods. And when you look at the actual, you could call it a mushroom, but technically it's a sclerotium. The outer layer has got different medicinal properties to the inner layer, and then the whole thing has got slightly different properties again. It's used as a synergist in many formulas, so it helps. And I don't fully understand it, but as a synergist, it helps make everything else in the formula work better. So it's got some anti-inflammatory properties, it's got some cleansing properties. So I think it would be a good addition, and it's quite a low dose mushroom as part of a men's health protocol. And talking about the prebiotic action, as we were talking about with Parkinson's disease previously, poria is a really profound prebiotic. So it's a food that supports the healthy bacterial communities in the gut. So as part of a men's health program, I would put a small amount, in a daily kind of mushroom powder that would have a specific male focus. Good question, Jean. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And then we're talking a lot about gut health, and I know that can be, of course, very helpful for men and men's health. If you could give us a super basic overview of what's the difference between a prebiotic and a probiotic, because I know here in America, we see a ton of products that say, oh, good prebiotic fiber. And then, there's so much information out there that it gets kind of confusing for us. So, maybe if you could do a general overview of what the difference between the two.
Well, we have, to make it even more confusing, we have the probiotic, prebiotic, and now we have postbiotic.
Oh.
which is the modern kind of lingo that's coming into the lexicon. So a probiotic is an organism that's a bacteria that you take as a capsule or a powder or as a liquid, and then it gets into your gut, and it's a living. Mostly these organisms are living. When you make an organism that fits that definition of a probiotic, it's made in a stainless steel tank and it's fermented. Once you take an organism out of the natural environment and produce it in a tank to make a supplement out of it, it loses its adaptability to live in the animal host. So these probiotics are living organisms, and then when you consume them, they survive the stomach acid and the bile acids, and they end up in the large intestine, where they start to behave like they did in their native environment, which was, someone's gut, like in the past. So they come alive and they eat food and they produce metabolites, and they have the ability to, as a result of producing those metabolites. So a metabolite is a waste. So if a bacteria eats a bit of soluble fiber from a lion's mane extract, the waste that it produces are some types of chemicals, and then those chemicals influence the health of the gut. They influence the health of the other bacteria in the environment, and it brings about changes and improvements in the health departments. And probiotics are very specific now. You can have a probiotic for your mouth. You can have a probiotic that will deal with IBS. You can have a probiotic that will deal with the uptake of vitamin B12. So they're very kind of targeted and precise, modern medicines.
Mm-hmm.
Those organisms are tourists, though, so they don't survive in the gut. So they get excreted, when you have a bowel movement. So you have to take them continually to get those benefits. And then the idea is that you wouldn't need to take them forever, that you could make the change and then eventually you could stop taking that probiotic. So a prebiotic, on the other hand, is a food that feeds the bacteria that live in your gut. So the soluble fibers and the insoluble fibers in all of the real mushroom products, so the beta-glucans, the chitin, and beta-glucans can be soluble or insoluble. Starch is made up of alpha-glucans, but there's all sorts of alpha-glucans that are non-starch, which are unique to mushrooms, and they're significantly prebiotic. So when you take a mushroom, you're feeding the bacteria in your gut, and if you've got 300 organisms in your gut, they all exist in different percentages. So the dominant ones might be 2 or 3 or 4%, and there might be like half a dozen of those. And then you've got this very long tail where you decrease the percentage. So 100 of those organisms might be 0.01%. So very small levels. When you have disruption to that environment, a bacteria that might only be present at 0.01% becomes 4%. That can be a problem. And with a man, let's just use an example. You have a meal of eggs, and then, the next day you're farting and it's just obnoxious. It's like rotten egg gas, and you clear the whole room. So that means that the sulfur producing bacteria or the sulfur consuming bacteria have increased their percentage to the point where they can convert all of the sulfur from the egg yolk into rotten egg gas. So a prebiotic is all about feeding the beneficial bacteria and not feeding the non-beneficial bacteria, so you can arrive back at a healthy balance that gives a healthy gut. And there's a whole plethora of prebiotic fibers. There's gum arabic, there's partially hydrolyzed guar gum, there's slippery elm, there's red dragon fruit powder. Cacao's got, soluble fibers in it. So what's often missing from those prebiotic supplements is the addition of a mushroom. And the beta-glucans and the chitin in mushrooms are very unique prebiotics. And then you've got the postbiotic category. So if you drank some green tea, the beneficial bacteria would take those polyphenols from the green tea and convert them into other molecules which would have different biological effects. If you use pomegranate, which is a kind of a modern classic example, pomegranate's got these very complex polyphenol molecules, and if you have the right bowel flora, you can convert those into urolithin A, which then gets taken up in the body, and then that's got all these health promoting and mitochondrial, supporting benefits. But you can't make urolithin A unless you have the right bowel flora. So you've got to have the prebiotic fiber to upregulate the bowel flora to make use of the polyphenols from the pomegranate. So I don't know if that's helped explain it or confuse it, but it's an interesting and fascinating area, and mushrooms play a very important role as both prebiotics and also postbiotics.
Yeah, it's just interesting, and I mean, I've been in the health space for a few years now, and it's just crazy how everything is so connected in that way that it's just once you get one thing working correctly, it starts helping the next thing, and it's kind of a chain reaction.
Yeah, and it often begins in the gut.
Yeah. Awesome. So we'll move on here to the next question. What are the best mushrooms for tremors? This is a good question.
Yeah, tough question too. Tremors can have all sorts of origins. So, it might be a lack of minerals. There's various, nervous system disorders. It might herald, the onset of Parkinson's disease, for example. So I would, as a default, I would go back to the ergothioneine piece. And without wanting to give too much emphasis to that particular topic, ergothioneine is a really important antioxidant. So all of the cells in our body have to perform their functions smoothly. And if cells become stressed as a result of chemical imbalance or toxicity or the presence of pesticides or bisphenol A from plastics, all of those things, then the smooth running of those cells can be disrupted. So if we want to make sure that our nervous system is really functioning optimally, then we need to ensure that we've got a good dietary source of ergothioneine. So that might play a key role. Mushrooms have got some minerals in them, but not significant quantities that might help someone with tremors. So it might be a magnesium deficiency as a result of decreased, consumption of green leafy vegetables and that sort of thing. So magnesium, as a secondary kind of supplement might be necessary. So I'd say that the ergothioneine, so Ergo Plus, which comes from golden oyster mushrooms, would be the best place to go there. And something like 5 Defenders, just as a broad spectrum approach to make sure that you're supporting all aspects of what mushrooms can do for other parts of your health.
Yeah. Awesome. And then we'll move on to the next question from Kino Captures. I'm assuming that's how we pronounce your name. Can mushrooms boost testosterone for those with low T?
Yeah, we've dealt with this somewhat in the early part of the session today. It depends on what's causing the low testosterone. So there's lots of causes for that. So you have to, get a healthcare professional to work through what all of the specific issues might be. But cordyceps is a mushroom that would be like the primary one for helping with low testosterone as part of a well-developed protocol that would be targeting your unique issues. So it might be you might have testicular varicose, so you might have like a varicose vein in the scrotum that increases the temperature, and the testes don't like having elevated temperature. So it could be simply that, or it might be the presence of toxicity in the environment. Or it might just be, fatigue and, exhaustion, that's playing a role in that. So working out what it is, I think whatever's going on, cordyceps would be a key ingredient in a well-developed protocol. And the secondary mushroom would be reishi to play a role in that.
Awesome. So cordyceps and reishi.
Yeah.
Awesome. So we'll go on to the next question. Matt, can you bring up the next question for us? Good one. So are mushroom supplements and vitamin/mineral supplements synergistic, or are they incompatible?
Oh, they're very highly synergistic. There's no incompatibility at all. So I would always recommend in a well-developed protocol for an individual that mushrooms, vitamins, and minerals all get combined together.
Yeah. We'll move on to the next question. We could bring that up. Is there a mushroom or a mushroom blend to help with seasonal allergies? And we talk about this a lot with pets, but we don't really talk about it much with humans. So what's your take on this, Lee?
Yeah. There's lots of herbs that I've used in the past with great success. So, my exploration into the mushroom world brings me to mushrooms like reishi and chaga, like that I would add to an overall kind of protocol. And allergies is a complex thing, and it would be wrong to give you the impression that like, pardon me, reishi would be like the answer to the allergies. It may be in some people, but you would need a more complex protocol. But reishi is the one that plays a role there. And allergies, it's complicated. It's not just one thing. So just to talk a little bit about what's actually going on and what we need to do. Mast cells inhabit the linings of our tissues. So in animals, mast cells are very highly expressed in the skin, which is why dogs in particular have got like those skin type things. But in humans, the mast cells in the lungs and in the gut. The gut's got the biggest community of mast cells, but then the gut comes next. Sorry, the lungs come next. So these mast cells are very vigilant to the external world, and they very rapidly respond to threatening environments so that they can bring about a response. So mast cells get activated not just by pollen or which is the most common seasonal allergy, or dog and cat dander, or dog saliva, or any of those kind of common things. It's also a stress response. So the mast cells respond to stress hormones. And so mast cells can be stabilized so that they don't as rapidly kind of, do their thing and create the allergic response. So from a mushroom point of view, all of the mushrooms will help, because calming down the gut and calming down the immune environment will globally decrease the inflammatory status and reduce the tendency to have a seasonal allergy. So having mushrooms on a regular basis is kind of like a foundational thing to keep the immune system focused and happy and healthy. And then the reishi's got the capacity to stabilize those mast cells and reduce their tendency to do their thing. The herbs that I have good success with in that category, Nigella sativa, or some people in the US call it black cumin seed, although it's not really a cumin seed. Albizia bark, Bicol skullcap, feverfew, echinacea work particularly well.
Gotcha. So you mentioned chaga and reishi. My mind went to five defenders. So you think five defenders could be a good?
Yeah, five defenders would be, because then you get all of those things that I was talking about. Would be a good choice.
Defenders. All right. And if we can move on to the next question, what mushrooms help lower cholesterol and triglycerides?
Yeah, good one. The mushrooms like shiitake have got good evidence for that. Oh, the there's a number of mechanisms that are going on, and you wouldn't only use a mushroom in that category. You'd use, a well-balanced herbal protocol and regulate your diet, etc. Exercise plays a really important role. It's not just about lowering LDL cholesterol, it's about reducing the chance for it to become oxidized in the bloodstream, because it's the oxidized LDL cholesterol that does all the damage. So a mushroom like shiitake will help balance the cholesterol. It'll help reduce the oxidation of that cholesterol. And triglycerides is very often about diet and about how much exercise you do. So we want to lower LDL. We want to reduce the tendency for it to oxidize. We want to increase HDL and then decrease the triglycerides. So diet and exercise, and then I guess the 5 defenders, which has the shiitake, would be, an ideal choice. But I would be recommending that you consume fresh mushrooms as often as you can during the week, because the consumption of them as part of your diet plays a very important role in that as well. So any sort of mushrooms that you could eat regularly would help.
Awesome. And we'll do another question here from Wilderness Drifter. They're asking a question: are mushrooms okay for younger teens, and at what doses?
Yes, certainly mushrooms are okay for teens at younger doses. What's a younger teen? Like 12, 13, 14. At that point, in my scheme of, how I've been trained to use natural products, mushrooms and herbs in a clinical setting, that's the beginning of the adult dose. And you can just go by body weight in that scenario. So I think in my overall scheme of things, I typically don't do that though. Just if there's a dosage range, I'd go to the lower end of that dosage range. But many younger teens, have got, body weights that are, not that dissimilar to the original adults where we developed these dosing regimes. So around 150 or 60 pounds is kind of like a standard adult body weight to do the dosing.
Yeah.
But you don't need to be concerned about overdosing. You need to be more concerned about underdosing. So if you're giving those younger teens adult doses, I think that's fine.
Okay.
Get them started early. Yeah.
Yeah. Start them early. We'll move on. We have one more question. We've got a few more minutes left. Do you think we could do a rapid fire question?
Yeah. I'll stop being so verbose.
You're good. So from polymathing, is there any information you could give on melanin and chaga?
Yeah, that is not a rapid fire question. Melanin's the black stuff that is a pigment, and there's different colors of melanin. So cordyceps has got melanin as well. It's just a different color. So melanin is a really curious molecule. It's very hard to break down. So it kind of fits into the prebiotic category. So there's a lot of unique stuff going on with chaga as a result of the prebiotic breakdown of melanin. And the melanin plays a role in the application of chaga being used topically in skin conditions. So you can apply chaga topically to help wounds and skin issues, and the melanin plays an important role in that.
Okay, you did it rapid fire. You said it wasn't, but you did it. That was good. I didn't realize when I asked that one that was.
Yeah, it's a complex topic, the melanin, and it's kind of poorly understood, but it's underrated. We should be eating as many black foods as we can. So when I eat tahini every day or sesame seed paste, I put it on my chia pudding, and I buy organic black sesame seed paste to get my little dose of melanin on a daily basis, along with my chaga.
Oh. See, guys, we're learning something new every day.
It kind of looks nice on the plate too.
Yeah. Now I like black sesame seeds too. They taste very good. But yeah, I think that is about all the time we have for today's Q&A. Lee, this was great.
Yeah, it was fantastic.
Yeah. And yeah, so thanks for watching, guys, and we will see you next month in July. And thanks for tuning in.
Yeah, thank you. I'll look forward to your questions next month. I'll be in the hot seat. It's challenging answering questions just off the cuff, but I love it.
Yeah, it's awesome. All right, thanks, guys. Bye.
Thanks, Jordan. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
And Matt. Thanks, Matt.